For 28 years, Johnny Small was locked up in prison for a crime he swears he did not commit. In 2016, a judge ruled he did not get a fair trial in 1988, and after over 2 decades as a North Carolina inmate, Johnny Small was set free. The city of Wilmington was ordered to pay him $7 million, but what he gained cannot replace what he lost. For the first time since he was exonerated, Small agreed to do a television interview with me. I recently talked exclusively with him from his home in Florida. Johnny Small is a long way away from the prisons where he spent 28 years of his life. He promised his mother if he ever got out, he would leave North Carolina and never look back. These days, he lives on his 10-acre farm in Florida with his wife, 12 dogs, 12 cats, a couple horses, some goats, and a donkey. But he remembers what happened to him 35 years ago like it was yesterday. In 1988, a 15-year-old named Johnny Small was arrested for murder. A tip to police linked him to a brutal crime. On July 13th, Pamela Dreyer was working at her fish store in Delgado Square, a little shopping center off Wrightsville Avenue. Someone came in, shot her in the head, and left her in a pool of blood. The killer took $173 from the cash register. That tip led police to Small.
They just slapped the handcuffs on me, threw me in a freaking car with a canine dog. All they said was that I killed someone. And then next thing you know, they started throwing pictures in front of my face. I mean, it was a horrible scene.
Small believes he was the victim of young people after reward money.
Everyone that testified against me was teenagers.
The main one, his best friend, David Bollinger, who was also accused in the murder. He had a solid alibi, though. He was out of town. Bollinger recanted his testimony decades later, which led to Small's release. In an interview with WECT in 2017, Bollinger says he was coerced by Wilmington detective J.J. Leitner into creating a fabricated confession that implicated Small in the killing.
He told me, if you don't tell me what I want to hear, you will go to jail for this. I will make sure you get the death penalty. He would be right there in the front row watching me die. You know, I'm 19, I'm scared. I asked for my parents. I wasn't allowed to make a call. I was told I didn't need a lawyer. Everything that I needed to do, I tried to do, but was denied. After a while, I caved. I gave him the story he wanted to hear.
Small says he had to live with that for 28 years, his best friend lying on him. He lost friends and family.
There's only certain people in my family that actually stuck with me.
Did your mom believe you were innocent?
The whole time, man, my grandmother. I don't know how I did it, but the only thing that kept me going was my mom.
Small says she never gave up believing he would get out. Small says he reached a point where he was convinced he was going to die in prison, either naturally or by force.
There was a day didn't go by whenever I went out on that yard. I didn't look at that fence and want to get on it and make them shoot me off of it because I was tired of being in there. And the only thing that stopped me was my mom. And 6 months before I got out, that there was the hardest thing I ever had to do. Was when I lost my mom and I never got to spend time with her.
When we come back, Small talks about the person he says is responsible for getting him through the years he's been out of prison.
You're watching WECT News at 6.
Continuing coverage now on Johnny Small.
Are you angry that you spent 28 years of your life locked up for a crime you say you didn't do?
Miss Francis, well, you have no idea the anger that is in me. I have a heavy bag here at home hanging on the tree. Whenever I get it, I just go out there and I just take it out on that.
Small credits his wife, Anna, for helping him get through the rough spots.
When did you meet your wife?
I met her before I got locked up, believe it or not.
Before,
Believe it or not.
when you were 15?
When I was 15.
Small says he knew there was something special the minute he laid eyes on her at a jukebox joint 35 years ago.
It was called Exonerated. It's right there on Wrightsville Avenue. I'll never forget it. I still remember what she was wearing when she walked in.
We're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
He had his doubts it would last because they lived two very different lives at 15. Small grew up in what was then called the projects.
She found out where I lived. I'm like, oh boy, she ain't gonna nothing to do with me no more. But I was wrong. She grew up in a good neighborhood.
She grew up on the right side of the tracks, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Her father owned some shell stations down there.
Anna's family moved to Florida while Small was on trial. They lost touch, but never forgot each other. The North Carolina Center on Actual Innocence, the real reason Small is a free man, found Anna. She was called to testify as a judge was deciding whether to exonerate Small. He says 28 years later, at that point in their early 40s, he says the feelings all came back.
All the emotions and the feelings I had for her back then had come flooding back. I started crying like a little baby.
6 months after he was released from prison, they got married. So life appears good. And then there's the settlement money.
The WPD detectives made procedural errors.
They settled with you for $7 million.
Yeah. Do you really think I seen all that?
What did you see?
I didn't see all that. I promise you that. I can give you my word on that. I didn't see that.
Well, who saw?
I didn't even see half of it.
Small claims most of the money went to attorneys. He admits, though, he was able to pay off his mortgage.
I ain't living all that great. But one thing I can say, though, my house is paid for, my property is paid for, all my vehicles are paid for. So, hey, as long as I'm able to pay my bills, that's all I care about.
Well, not really. There are two things Small cares deeply about, and he's still waiting on them.
You only got one time to get proven wrong, and it sticks with you, just like out here now. Just because I was proven innocent and all that, do you know how hard it is? It's still on my record. I'm still waiting for the governor to clear it because I'm still stereotyped, ridiculed because of that.
His biggest wish is that they find the real killer.
I would love to know who did it because that person that did it took my life as well.
Small would still like to see the individuals he says are responsible for the 28 years he lost held accountable. As for the detective who supposedly coerced Small's best friend into saying he was the killer, that was apparently part of the $7 million settlement. The city of Wilmington acknowledged that detectives with the Wilmington Police Department mishandled the case.